Welcome one and all to yet another juicy, red-hot, sizzling Kings of War battle report. Tournament report. We should change that too. Well, that's going to be the first 10 seconds chopped off this video immediately. So, this is from the Easter Beaster, and that was put on by the fine people at Golden Troll, and it's 1,995 points plus a special monster, and you can see it right here. This is the Easter Beast, and you've got a bit of license of what to do with this as far as modelling goes, but it's essentially a height 1 giant with a breath attack is the best way to describe it. It's not quite as good as a giant, and it's obviously much shorter, but it does have breath attack. It's got lots of special rules, it's got Strider, and this is what I decided to go with to create the perfect Easter Beast. And that is, as you can see, 2 little bunnies and a big giant evil undead bunny. Now these are all from Bad Squiddo Games. It's I have no idea how this is supposed to be pronounced, but I believe it's something like Mjolnir, which is, in mythology, it's some kind of hideously created Frankenstein rabbit that steals children's milk during the night, as far as I understand it. So that's what that model is, and the others are just your standard bunnies, both from Bad Squiddo. So, look at that. Evil bunnies ahoy. So that is in addition to the 1,995 points, and in terms of working out the kill points at the end, the Easter Beast is worth 150. Steve is in the chat already. So let me know if you're watching along here. Any tips or tricks that you may pick up or you want to impart onto me or the other viewers. Now, this first scenario was played incorrectly, but I'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to go through the list first. So you can see my list nearest to the camera here, and it's very, very similar to what I've been running recently. There in the bottom left you can see the Soul Reaver Cavalry Regiment, the allies from the foul depraved forces of undead. Fits in nicely with the undead halflings. And then on the hill there's 2 volley guns. Obviously you can't take 3 at this points level. Then as we go along you can see the Honour Guard with the Potion of the Caterpillar as usual. Behind the Battle Shrine, which is making its comeback. I think this list is identical to the one I used in the previous battle report, if you watched that. Then there is the Spearling formation, of course, which has the Horde in the centre and the 2 regiments are further to the right, along with the Master Sergeant who is mounted with a bow. There is the Standard Bearer with the Loot of Insatiable Darkness behind the Horde. There's an Iron Beast next to the Horde, and all the way on the other side you can see the Easter Beast there behind one of the regiments and also behind the Archer Horde, and all the way at the top there on the far right of the army you can see there is the Duke on the winged Arrowles, and he has the boomstick to give him a bit of long range attack so he doesn't have to get into the danger zone to be a threat. So that is the list, not too many upgrades and fairly straightforward. Now this is the raise scenario, and I'm against goblins in this first game. So this is how it was played incorrectly, and I did the same thing in the previous battle report, which you may have seen, and essentially you're not allowed to claim the objectives on your opponent's half until turn 2. That's when the claiming of the objectives begins, but the way it's worded in the book doesn't make that immediately obvious. Now, I was under the impression that it was turn 2 until I played the previous game before this tournament, and then looked in the book and looked at the bullet points to see the scoring, and the second bullet point, I believe, states that the central objective, you score on it at the end of the game, but the first bullet point doesn't mention when the scoring begins for claiming the objectives on your opponent's half. It's only above in a little paragraph on its own, so you have to actually read the whole thing to see that. So it's easy enough to miss with the way it's laid out, but of course you should be reading the entire scenario anyway and not just the bullet points at the end. So regardless, this game was played as if you can steal the objectives from turn 1, which is why my Duke is positioned right in front of one of them so he can just dive straight on it. And we'll see if that affects the outcome of the game or not, whether I'll have to put an asterisk next to this in the history books. So here's the layout of my army here. It was very nice having a hill in the deployment zone. The terrain at this event was very, very nice. Every table had unique terrain that was themed to the mat it was on. So this is obviously nice and lava and rocky. There's lots of line of sight blocking terrain as well on many of the tables. So we've got the volley guns on the hill. Then it's fairly spread out because the objectives are quite spread out. If you look at the wide shot here, you can see the ones I'm going for. I've got 2 on the right, which are the little blue circles there, and one of them on the left, whereas my opponent has 2 down here on the left and 1 sort of on the right. So I've got quite the bulk of my army, especially all the heavy hitting stuff, is down here on the left for defensive purposes, and then the Duke is hoping to be going around mopping up my objectives on his own, because there isn't that much over there that's mobile enough to threaten him. So let's get to the opposing force, shall we? Looking down at the Duke, we have a Troll Bruiser and a Troll Horde. We have the Easter Beast with that big tentacle monstrosity there. There's 2 hordes of goblins. One are Sharpsticks, I believe, and the other one is Grogger's Goons. And then behind there is a Standard Bearer. There is Grogger's Great Lobber at the back there. There is a Giant in the middle, which is quite a short giant, but that's made up for by this absolute beast with this Colossal Giant here. So the Giant just about goes up to the kneecap of the Colossal Giant. Behind there's a War Trombone. There is a King on a Chariot. And I believe that is a Wizard mounted, not 100% sure. Another War Trombone, a Mincer Mob, and there is another Troll Horde. Alessandro wants to know what the rules are for the beast. So I think I already went through it, but I'll tell you again anyway, just briefly. So, in fact, I think I've got a picture of the rules on my phone here, so I'll just pull that up and have a look at it right now so I can give you the exact stats for it, rather than just giving you a brief outline. So the Easter Beast is height 1, it has crushing strength 2, strider, brutal, breath attack 10, vicious versus cavalry, and nimble. And its stats are speed 6, melee 4, no ranged stat, defense 5, attacks d6 plus 6, nerve 16, 18. So it's, like I said, it's similar to a shorter and slower giant, but also has a breath attack, and it's nimble. So it's quite a handy little beastie. And I think it slots in quite nicely into my fairly shooty army. So, there's the opponent's force there, and a look at the objectives. All the way around, and there's a central objective as well, which you score at the end. You can't remove that one during the game, that's just at the end. Which could be a little tiebreaker, perhaps, depending how the game's going. So, turn 1, and my opponent, I believe, elects to go first. And you can see the Mincer Mob and the Trolls are moving up. They're not concerned at all about what I've got facing them down. The Colossal Giant gets right up there. He goes as fast as he possibly can, and he's within charge range of multiple units now. So I may have to actually pull some things back. One thing I need to possibly not do is always deploy right up to the line. In a scenario like this, it's maybe understandable that you want to deploy further forward, because you don't want the opponent having a free run at the objectives on your side, and you also want to get to the other side at some point. But I think in most scenarios I often deploy right up to the front regardless, so that's something I should probably think about when I'm playing ranged armies. Over on this side you can see the Trolls have positioned themselves, but the Bruiser, crucially, is not looking far enough to the side, so he's not going to be able to see if the Duke just goes 20 inches straight forwards and looks into their flank, which is a mistake. In the middle, everything else is just moving up as well, because they want to get into combat, because I do have a bit of shooting superiority, I would say, at least until the Trombones get in there. A volley gun takes a few wounds from shooting. That's likely from... who would that be? That could be a lightning bolt. It could be a breath attack from the Easter Beast. I'm not sure. No, the Easter Beast is on the other side. I can't remember what did that, but 4 wounds anyway. Turn 1 for me. So, as I said, the Duke is able to get up there, and at this point he shouldn't have been able to take an objective off the table, but that's how we were playing it. So he does take one, and we'll see if that fouls the result of this game in some way. Then in the middle, there's not too much movement, just a bit of repositioning. Certain units are moving backwards, so they can't be charged by the Colossal Giant, in fact. And putting some damage onto the Easter Beast with the archers. And the Honour Guard are chilling out behind the Battle Shrine. They're waiting for the fighting to start. The Colossal Giant, you can see there, I've blocked off most of the good charges that he wants, so he won't be able to charge the Honour Guard because he doesn't have the angle on it because of the Battle Shrine's positioning, and if he wants to charge the Battle Shrine, he might kill it, but then the Honour Guard would just shred him to pieces. And the other 2 units he could charge both have ensnare in the front, so it wouldn't be the easiest going. He's not able to charge the Iron Beast because the gap's not big enough, and everyone else has moved out of range. And he takes a little bit of shooting damage as well, but I can't actually see what it says on the dice there. It's not much, though. The volley guns, what do? Well, they waver the unit of trolls that were next to the Mincer mob, which is nice because the Soul Reavers charged straight out into the Mincer mob and killed them in one go. Which you might think, defense 6 on the front, they'd be a bit disappointed to die, but these are Soul Reavers we're talking about here. So they munch through that unit, and this flank is looking pretty much nailed down now, because one dead unit, one wavered. The Soul Reavers are not going to die next turn to a single War Trombone, unless there's some kind of miracle. And there's how it's looking. So it's looking fairly good already for the League of Varaudia, but we'll see how this middle goes. I think I've closed off all the really juicy options for the Colossal Giant, but we'll see what he's got up his sleeves. Does he have any sleeves? He kind of has sleeves. I'm not sure they're actual sleeves, but he does have something around his wrists there. So the Trolls and the Troll Bruiser, perhaps wisely, decide they're going to ignore the Duke, because even though he's a threat, he doesn't have that many attacks. So if you're just constantly rotating to look at him, he could just dance around there the whole game, and that's not fun for the opposition, because I can dance around while also using his boomstick lightning bolt on them, and there's not much they can do to me to retaliate. So maybe it's best to just ignore him and just take a hit. If he does charge in and doesn't kill them, on the counterattack they're more than capable of dealing with him. In the centre you can see there's been more shooting. There's been more advance, should I say, from the Easter Beast, who's got into range to use his breath attack, and I think it's Grogger's Goons, this horde at the front there. You can see exactly how everything's looking here. You can see that the small giant chooses to go into the small regiment there, and the king on chariots has come up. But I don't think that's the end of the movement, because, yep, as you can see there, so that's how it initially looked. The king on chariot is actually sitting on an objective here, so he's going to take that, which I'm more than satisfied with, because I think I'm going to win the fight overall, so I'm not too bothered about those objectives. The trolls can't do anything, of course, and the trombone is getting in position to have a go at the Soul Reavers. So the Colossal Giant decides to join in with that charge as well, since both of them are able to fit in there. So you would hope that two giants in the front would do something, but then again it is an ensnaring unit, so it's not guaranteed. Grogger's Lobber hits the Battle Shrine and does 5 damage, but not enough to remove it yet. And 1 damage from the War Trombone, which is about what you'd expect against the Defense 6 Soul Reavers, really. You wouldn't expect to do much more than that. And look at that terrible round for the giant pair. They only do 5 damage to that regiment of spearlings, and they waver them. So now there's going to be lots of flank action coming in. There's a big fence there, which is going to cause some hindrance, but you'll see which units get involved in this shortly. So there's how it's looking. And to tell you what I'm going to do here, I've worked out that my horde of spearlings, right in the middle there, just to the left of the Colossal Giant, they are within charge range of that horde at the back there, next to the Easter egg objective in the middle. So they're going to charge into that unit, and I'm not sure if that was the unit's final position there. I think it was. It looks like a long charge there, but we did work out that they were in range, so that will get them out of the way, which will then allow the Battle Shrine to move as well, and the Honour Guard will then have a flank charge on the Colossal Giant. Now, it would have been possible to get flank charge with the Spearling Horde and the Honour Guard into the flank of the Colossal Giant, but I felt that would have been a little bit overkill. And the Battle Shrine should find it quite easy to get out of the way and then still use its Lightning Bolt. And over on the right, the Troll Bruiser is looking like a bit of a threat. If he gets in range of the archers, for example, that wouldn't be a fun time. It would take him a long time to kill them, but he would stop them shooting. So the king and also this unit take away an objective as well now. So the goblins are actually in the lead, 2-1 on objectives at this stage. turn 2 for Rordia. So, over on the right, the Spearling Regiment charge into the Troll Bruiser. And it looks like they've done a teensy bit of damage there. I think that's a 1. The Duke decides not to charge into the flank of the Trolls, thinking he's probably not going to kill them in one round, so instead just let them be shot and land on that juicy objective there instead and claim that, which he does. And you can see there's the charge from the Spearling Horde into the Goblin Horde. Not much damage done, but it ties them up and stops them counter-attacking anything that I've left the flanks open with. You can see that the Honour Guard pulverise the Colossal Giant in the flank, which is nice. The Soul Reaver Cavalry blast into whoever was that's sitting there. I think it was the King on the chariot, so he's dead. The Battle Shrine moved up and then wavers the War Trombone with only 1 damage, which is a bit lucky. And what do the volley guns do? Well, they finish off the Trolls, which is why I didn't bother trying to attack them with the Soul Reavers, because they were already at death's door and the volley guns just finished them off. So there's how it looks in the middle. We've got Easter Beast on Easter Beast action, and if it comes down to just those 2 units fighting, whoever gets the first hit in you would give the advantage to. So that's what I've attempted to do there, and you can see how it looks at the end. Nice clear picture, and it's a bit of a big mass brawl in the middle, and we've got 2 victory points each at this stage. The other one I want to claim is on the left, which the Soul Reavers could go and get at some point, but I'm not turning them to face that way yet, because that's before I know whether they're going to be needed or not in the middle, so I'm just going to wait and see how it plays out there to see if they need to steam in and do some killing, because it's no good getting that objective over on the left if I'm then going to lose the fight in the centre and lose the middle objective. So, turn 3 for the Goblins. Double charge into the Spearlings with the Trolls and the Troll Bruiser, which is fine because they're in the front. They might kill the unit anyway. Easter Beast back in on the other Easter Beast. And then this regiment of Spearlings are not going to be surviving this. They've taken a flank charge from Grogger's Goons and the Giant in the front. And this one is going to rumble on. These 2 units probably aren't going to kill each other without assistance. And you can see that that hero, the mounted one, has positioned himself right in front of the Soul Reavers, just to stop them getting into the fight just yet, and to stop them turning as well towards the objective without killing him. So the Troll blob does actually punch through those Spearlings, and then they're able to turn around to face the Duke to make sure they're not going to be rear charged by him, which would definitely be a wise option. The flank charge on the Trolls is a little bit hit and miss with someone with only 5 attacks, so going up to 10 it wouldn't be anywhere near a guaranteed kill, but in the rear you would definitely like the chances of inflicting some sweet, sweet troll death. These 2 beasts are fighting each other, and more damage is done to mine in the first round there, but what actually happens here, those Trolls are visible to my Easter Beast, which we work out by getting the old template and laser out in a minute. So my Easter Beast is going to be able to charge into the flank of those Trolls. And here the Giant and Grogger's Goons finish off that regiment of Spearlings, which is fine by me. And that's how they turn to face at the end, to try and minimise the death that's about to be caused by my units charging into them. And not much going on there. So there's how it looks at the end of that turn. Turn 3 for the Rordians. So the Duke charges over the top of the Trolls into the flank of the Bruiser, thinking that's actually a decent chance of getting something away there, and he wavers the Bruiser, which is nice. The Easter Beast into the flank of the Trolls doesn't do that much damage, but it's a start. And the enemy Easter Beast now can't see either of those 2 units, which was critical to my thinking there, because I wouldn't want to be rear charged by that thingy. It would be catastrophic. So the Iron Beast flank charges the Giant and wavers it, which is very good, because you can see where the Honour Guard are, they've actually turned their backs on the Giant. So if the Honour Guard didn't kill what they've charged into up there, which they don't kill by the way, then that means the giant would have a rear charge on them. So I needed to waver it with the Iron Beast so that the giant can only then countercharge the Iron Beast and not charge into the rear of the Honor Guard. So that has happened. The Honor Guard and the Spearling Horde get that unit up to 14, but it's not enough to kill them. So the Honor Guard are constantly just charging around that fence, which is seriously hindering them, and then of course they're going into a phalanx as well. The Soul Reavers, of course, murderlise that character that just parked in front of them, and you can see the volley guns have turned around to face the action as well, while there's no targets for them. The Battle Shrine again wavers the War Trombone, which is nice. Brendan has joined us in the chat now. And there's how it looks at the end of that turn. So it's very, very promising for Rordia at the moment. There's still the 2 Goblin Hordes left, but they're not long for this world, and the Giant has been wavered, so it's limited in what it can do. So they could potentially take out the Iron Beast next turn, and that might be all they successfully kill. Because the Trolls can of course countercharge the Easter Beast, so it's possible they could get a kill there, but that's not certain by any means. And the opposing Easter Beast, which is staring down the archers, if it charges into them, it is very unlikely to kill them in one round. Almost impossible, I would say. So it's looking very, very promising. So it does have to go in there though to stop them shooting. And you can see the Troll Bruiser has just turned round, since it's nimble, and it was able to just move a little bit while being wavered. The Trolls have countercharged the Easter Beast, and they do a bit of damage, but not enough to waver it yet, or kill it for that matter. And the archers take a bit of damage there, but it's not going to be enough to worry them yet. The Iron Beast doesn't take too much damage actually in this combat, so that's going to be alright for another turn. And that's how it looks there. So I think that horde of goblins at the top there became wavered last turn, which is why they haven't countercharged anybody. So turn 4 for Rordia. The Duke finishes off the Troll Bruiser and then turns round to face the action again. The Easter Beast wavers those trolls. Now this is why I always put items that limit the effect of wavering on trolls. So Dwarven Ale, Chalice of Wrath, and anything that just boosts your nerve value in general, because trolls are prone to a waver, and they've got that big 3-point gap between the 2 values, so you want to try and minimise that where possible, and those items aren't particularly expensive, and they've saved me many a time in my goblin tournaments. The archers actually do a bit of damage to the Easter Beast on the countercharge, which is comical. The Iron Beast countercharges the Giant, I believe, and kills it, and then... Oh no, it countercharges the Horde because I was about to shoot the Giant with the volley guns. So the Iron Beast into the Horde, and then the volley guns obliterate what's left of the Giant. Splat. Bits of giant flesh flying everywhere. The Honor Guard and the Horde of Spearlings finish off the Horde of Goblin Sharpsticks. And what does the Battle Shrine do? Well, it kills the War Trombone. It's the 3rd time it's wounded it, and this time finishes it off. And there's the Soul Reavers, who I decided weren't required. Their presence was not needed in the centre, so they've gone to claim that objective, which puts me into the lead. And it's looking very, very bad for the Goblins now. So it's a question of what is going to survive. So that Horde may be able to kill off the Iron Beast, but they don't. And then Grogger's Lobber actually kills the Battle Shrine. There you go, so that's dead. The Easter Beast is still fighting the archers unsuccessfully. There's the Iron Beast surviving. And then in my turn, the Duke sweeps in there to finish off the Easter Beast. The Honor Guard and the Iron Beast kill off the Horde. The Master Sergeant, I think, charged into the rear of them as well, just to make sure. And the Spearling Horde are just sitting on that central objective to get me the extra point. And the Easter Beast finishes off the Troll Horde. So he is the only thing that's left, Grogger's Great Lobber. And what does he do in turn 6? Well, hits the Iron Beast, does a lot of wounds to it, but doesn't kill it. Then on turn 6 for the Rordians, the Duke moves forwards towards Grogger's Lobber, just in case there's turn 7 to get a charge on it. But there isn't, and that's how the game ends. So, maximum points to the League of Rordia, and very successful game 1, not too many units were lost. And everything that was juicy actually got to do some fighting, which is nice. And I think everything really went as expected. There we go. So, round number 2. Obviously, when you have a huge win in round number 1, you expect to be matched up against something that's equally or more dangerous than your army. And opposite me, there is an army of Brotherhood, which is very, very heavy cavalry. It's an incredibly fast army. Everything is faster than almost everything I have. I think the slowest unit on the enemy side, other than the Easter Beast, of course, which is only speed 6, the slowest thing other than that is a horde of allied Honor Guard, which is speed 7. Everything else is speed 8, 9 or 10. There are multiple flyers and mounted characters. And this is the push scenario. So that's not an ideal scenario for an army of cavalry, but they do have the Easter Beast, who doesn't get slowed down too significantly by putting tokens on it. And I'm putting all my tokens on the Iron Beast, which I may be regretting at some point, but we'll see about that. So here is my setup. Over on the right, I've got a volley gun on the hill. I've got Spearling regiments protecting the Soul Reavers. I've got the Easter Beast there, the Battle Shrine, and you can see in the middle actually, but by the time I'm taking the pictures, there's already been a charge made. That's because the one classic mistake that people make is not read the opposing army list carefully enough to see if there are any vanguarding units, and there was a mounted hero who was able to vanguard up, and then when my opponent won the roll-off and selected the first turn, of course that meant one of the volley guns is going to get charged instantly. So, not the best of starts at all there. Over on this side, I've got my Duke, I've got the Honor Guard, and I've got the Iron Beast carrying all the tokens, hiding behind the Horde. And it's a very heavy-hitting army opposite me. There's the Honor Guard, and there's a Duke from the Rordia allies, and then there are multiple Brotherhood Knight units. Most of them are similar. They have a formation that gives them extra speed, I think, and there are about 3 or 4 of those units. There's some light cavalry as well, and some heroes. And there's also a mounted flying character as well on the end there from the Brotherhood. So, wow. And there is the Easter Beast for my opponent with the 3 tokens on it, next to the pool there. So, turn 1, of course, volley gun gets charged, and everything else is just moving up a little bit. The Honor Guard have dipped their toes into the woods. So again, with a little bit of planning, because I think I definitely have the shooting superiority in this game, a little bit of pre-planning, I could have positioned units so that enemies dipping their toes into the woods aren't immediately in charge range of all my units. But again, it's just habit to just deploy far up for some reason. Everything else is advancing into charge range, so I'm going to have to block off units and sacrifice things left, right and centre. Because with all these knights, of course they don't want to be charging the front of my Spearling units because of the ensnare and the phalanx, which takes away the thunderous charge that a lot of cavalry rely on. But they are very heavy hitting though, so anything else they're charging, it'll be bad news, or if they get any flanks. And of course they're very manoeuvrable, there's lots of flyers and other mounted heroes as well, so they're going to be able to outmaneuver my army, certainly. Now, this is a situation here, because this Spearling regiment can either throw its life away, or allow something else important in my army to die. Because I've got a volley gun on the hill, I've got other things on the other side of the hill that can be charged in the flank by that flyer, if the regiment of Spearlings do not engage it. And they're not going to kill it in one go, so if they do charge in there, they're going to get flanked by the knights and die. So it's one of those situations where if you let yourself get into that position, you have to lose something. You can either throw away the Spearlings, or throw away whatever that flyer is staring at, or reposition your whole army to avoid it, which is a bit of a nightmare, especially since they can just dance around again the following turn. So the volley gun takes a bit of damage, but it's not dead yet, so it's not going to be able to shoot though. Turn 1 for audience. So I decide to make the charge. I decide the Spearlings' lives are not worth that much. Decide to go in there. You can argue about whether it's worth it or not, but you have to weigh up. That flyer getting behind your lines is going to be an absolute nightmare. So I decided Spearlings might as well die to hold them up for a turn, stop it flying next turn. And the volley gun puts a teensy bit of damage onto those knights. The archers actually shoot off the light cavalry unit that was staring at them, which is nice because it's one less thing that I needed to block. And you can see the Iron Beast came in here to breath attack onto that hero, but only did 2 damage. The Duke decided to kind of throw his life away because the Honour Guard were within charge range of some of my other units. And again, just deploying that far forward may come back to bite me because I had to kind of throw away my Duke here to avoid being charged by things. You can see how close everything is. I didn't want the Honour Guard getting into my Honour Guard, definitely. And I wouldn't be too thrilled about them getting into the Spearling Horde either, because even though there's the Ensnare and the Phalanx, there are other knights that can join in with the charge as well. So, multiple charges going in, and suddenly the Ensnare and the Phalanx don't look that clever when there's billions of attacks coming in on them. So, the Duke is just laying down his life over there to hold them up, because my actual plan here, you can see how the Iron Beast is now facing over to the right. I tried to put up this wall that's going to be difficult to break through with my Spearling Horde there, because the Iron Beast doesn't really want to stick around on this side. It wants to be going towards the middle, because I want my opponent's heavy hitting units on the left to be stuck there fighting against this wall of Spearlings that I've got there, and the Honour Guard and the Duke there as a bit of a threat, kind of to force a bit of a standoff to make them hold up for a while. And over in the centre, I think I've got the advantage because I've got my Soul Reavers in there, I've got lots of my shooting, I've got the Master Sergeant who's sitting in front of those knights and he manages to do damage to them, so there's a good chance they won't kill him on the countercharge because he does have Ensnare and Defence 5 and they're going to lose their Thunderous now. I've got my Easter Beast behind a regiment of Spearlings, and the enemy Easter Beast, who is up there behind that rock. I'm hoping we can get into an Easter Beast off, and my beast will get the first crack at his, which is slower because it's carrying objectives. So I'd hope to win that duel and then use my Easter Beast to keep the tokens on his half. Now, it's all very well in theory, but of course lots of things can go wrong there, and there are other knight units I have to deal with. There's also a healing character around there somewhere as well. But that's the overall gist of the plan. It's not too detailed at this stage. So, knights into archers, as you'd expect. Can't block everything off. Double charge into my Duke with the Honour Guard and the opposing Duke, so he's going to die, but we kind of knew that. And then, what I could have done here is, if you look at all the terrain, I shouldn't really have positioned things like my Honour Guard behind an obstacle, because that's going to prevent them moving at the double. So they weren't able to get into a position where they can threaten behind the Duke, because since the Duke's gone right into the woods, it's going to be really easy for them to kill him and then bounce back out of the woods again. So you have to consider the terrain carefully and consider where you're drawing your opponent to. So, what else happens here? Well, the Easter Beast, my opponent's beast has moved into the middle there, which I'm glad about because it's into the zone where I want to kill it. And the knights that were in those woods have gone into the archers now. However, the Easter Beast with its breath attack kills my stealthy regiment of Spearlings in one go. Wow. So they are just dead, and I think they were possibly inspired as well. I'm not sure. But regardless, they are dead. So that has put a little bit of a spanner in the works. The volley gun dies at the second attempt from that hero, which is okay. It took him longer than I would expect to do it. The archers take some damage, so I'm going to have to do something about that menace. So what I'm actually going to do here, you can see the Iron Beast there. I'm going to be charging into that hero in a minute, and then trying to overrun into the flank of those knights. But it's going to be a long overrun required, but we'll see if it can happen. The Master Sergeant becomes wavered from that countercharge, which is okay because he's holding them up and he's much cheaper than they are. And then over here, the Spearling regiment is killed, and you can see a human hand repositioning the unit afterwards. So the Spearlings that charged into that flyer to stop it going off a turn earlier into the back of my army. But the way the Knights pivot means they've actually left themselves in view of the volley gun still, which I'm very pleased about. In fact, there's how they finish. So, my Duke is dead, and the Honour Guard pull back out of the woods, of course, because they don't want to get charged by my Honour Guard, and the Duke is just leaving himself in there as bait to see if my Honour Guard will rush in there and try and kill him. So, turn 2 for me. Volley gun, put some damage on those Knights. It's not a bad amount of damage there. That's got them up into the danger zone now. If I can plink some damage on them later, that could finish them off. The Master Sergeant just repositions himself a little bit in front of that unit to stop them charging into anything else next time. We were working out the angles to make sure that they wouldn't have been able to reach anybody without going through him. And you can see the Iron Beast, it nearly succeeded with that overrun into the flank. It was just 1 inch short on the overrun, so couldn't quite get in there, which would have been amazing had he done that. And the Honour Guard, I decide, you know what, they're not actually critical to my plan to win this game. Even though it's not going 100% the way I would want regardless, I think that Duke is actually someone that could pose a problem to my plan, because I want to be moving the Iron Beast to the right, and I want to take away the fastest units that can actually reach where I want to win the game. So I decide, you know what, it may get the Honour Guard killed, but they may not get killed in one round, because anyone charging into them is going to be hindered. So if I can go in there and kill that Duke in one go, that would actually be quite a decent payoff as far as my strategy goes. You can see 8 damage was inflicted. And now to kill the Duke, it was pretty much 50-50 whether the Duke dies or not, looking at the numbers involved with the going through the woods. And I also Bane chanted the Honour Guard as well to make up for that loss of Thunderous Charge. So it was pretty 50-50 whether he was going to die as a result of it. And I thought I'd go for the risk. I was feeling lucky, but it didn't work. He did not die. I think I may have got him on the first nerve roll, but of course he's self-inspiring and then failed on the second one. So had he died, I would have been able to turn the Honour Guard round, and then both those units who would want to charge into them would be hindered by the woods. So they may well die, but it's possible that they could have survived. And there are no re-rolls in this tournament, so I would have been in a decent position to then hold up those 2 units with my Spearling Horde afterwards, which would have allowed me more time to get away and taken out the flyer. So you can see my thinking there, but it's not paid off. So the Honour Guard are going to get flanked now, which is going to mean their probable demise, unfortunately. So it was a gamble. Sometimes you have to take gambles. Sometimes it's better to just sit back and be a deterrent for your enemy advancing. On this occasion, maybe that's what I should have gone with. So you can see that I've turned round my Soul Reavers to face the right flank at this point, because there was no way of them getting out of the charge range of the flyer over there on the right, and also being outside of the charge range of, or the arc of sight of the Knights that are there in the middle. If they'd gone far enough to avoid the flying character, they would have been in a position to be charged by those Knights, is pretty much how I remember it. So they've turned themselves to face that way, so if anyone wants to charge them, it'll be in the front, and if anyone wants to charge the volley gun, they'll be there to charge in afterwards. So we'll see what happens there. You can see the Battle Shrine is chilling out around there as well. Lightning bolting off. And this is what happens here then. So the Knights are not moving on the hill, but the volley gun is on the hill, so they'll be able to charge that in a minute. And the flying character just lands next to the Soul Reavers, as you'd expect. And they're going to have to do a bit of dancing around. Very expensive unit who probably aren't going to be able to fight now because they'll have to be rotating themselves so much. So it's really not the greatest positioning on my part there. I should put them in a position where they could get up and out of the way of this flank assault, which I knew was coming. So the Easter Beast on Easter Beast action is not going necessarily as planned there. it wasn't helped by my Spearling regiment being killed there at the first sign of damage. So the Honour Guard are going to get fried in the woods now. And look at that, the Easter Beast. I think I put some damage on it first, and now it's put 4 onto me, which is not nice. So I was relying on winning that combat and stealing its tokens and taking them into the enemy half. And the Honour Guard, of course, are dead, and the other knights charged into the Spearlings, which meant that had they double wand on my Honour Guard, for example, my Spearlings wouldn't be able to flank charge the Honour Guard, which would have been fairly tasty. A lot of attacks would have come in there. So a few damage done to that unit, so they'll probably die next turn rather than now. And my archers are dead as well, I think. I think it was the archers that were there. Let's see. Yes, it was. So the archers are toast. And these knights kill the Master Sergeant at the second attempt, so they're just turning to face the action now. And turn 3. So, again, I need to do more damage than that with my beast on his beast, but I've only got it up to 3 damage now, after 2 rounds of attacks, which is less than my opponent managed in 1 round. So that fight needed to go in my favour, and at the moment it's not, so it's not looking good. The Iron Beast is hanging around those knights, does 6 damage to them at the first attempt. The Soul Reavers are just spinning round to face the enemy, making sure they're not getting flanked or rear charged, but they're kind of taking themselves out of the game here. And the Battle Shrine has moved down there as well to lightning bolt that flying hero, but doesn't do enough damage. You can see that the volley gun does some damage to the knights that were just fighting the Master Sergeant. So we're doing a fair bit of damage to each unit, but not finishing them off at this stage. And the Horde fighting back against those knights, again, just getting them up to, everything seems to be on 4 or 5 damage, but not dead. And there's how it looks, so it's not healthy at all. There are multiple charge options available now to the Brotherhood with Rordian allies. Turn 4, so the Duke, I think this is the one that I wounded earlier with my Honour Guard, charges into the Standard Bearer. Knights and Honour Guard into the front of that unit of Spearlings. It's going to be enough, even with the Hindrance and the Phalanx and the Ensnare, because they're already damaged and there's lots of attacks coming in. And the Easter Beast is going to continue its fight against the other Easter Beast. And this guy positions himself so that it can't be seen by the Soul Reavers again, which is going to just carry on indefinitely until I decide which unit I want to rear charge my cavalry unit. And the Iron Beast gets multi-charged. So Waver for the Standard Bearer. Horde dead. Easter Beast wavered. Now that fight is really going badly. Iron Beast seems to be doing okay at this stage. And the Volley Gun on the hill is dead, of course, as well. So now the Soul Reavers aren't going to be able to charge anybody because they can't see anyone, and they're just going to have to pick their poison basically and decide which way they want to face. And you can see it's not looking healthy over there. So at the moment it's still not lost though, because the Iron Beast is still alive with the tokens, and I could get lucky and kill the other Easter Beast at some point. So the Soul Reavers turn round. They're accepting a rear charge from the Knights because I decided that the Battle Shrine would throw his lightning bolt at those knights and had stood a slightly better chance of wavering those knights than he had of wavering this flying hero, because they were on higher damage. But alas, that's not going to work out. The Iron Beast decides to go for one of those units and doesn't do that much. Got them up to 9 actually, so maybe a bit unlucky there not to accomplish anything from that round. Over here the Easter Beast just moves away because it's nimble, so it can turn and then move backwards. And the reason it's doing that is because even though it can still be charged, it's now not going to be rear charged potentially by those knights, I think, if they wanted to do that, which they probably wouldn't because there's Soul Reavers there. And also it gets me slightly closer to that Easter egg I think we used the Easter egg in this game. In the middle, was it? I can't remember. We put the objective that's in the middle anyway to be picked up. So my Easter Beast wants to be moving towards that, because my plan will require me having that objective and also killing that barely wounded enemy Easter Beast. So it's a bit of a long shot at this stage, but it's still open, and you've got to keep trying things. Every time something goes wrong in your plan, every time a gamble doesn't pay off, or a unit dies when you weren't expecting it to, or your opponent makes a move that counters whatever you had in mind, then you have to keep readjusting and coming up with another way to win. Even if it's a long shot, just pick whatever might work with a bit of luck and just keep going for it all the way until the end. So, of course, the Soul Reavers get recharged because I didn't manage to kill that unit with the Lightning Bolt. It did not finish them off. And the Iron Beast is in a bit of a night sandwich, so it's very likely to die. The Honor Guard, what did they kill? Oh, they killed the Standard Bearer. Iron Beast is dead. Battle Shrine, charged in the rear. Soul Reaver's dead. Battle Shrine, alive. And then in my turn it charges into the Easter Beast, hoping to get really lucky, but doesn't kill it. And you can see that my Easter Beast moved away again from that enemy Easter Beast after becoming wavered again. Turn 6. So, of course, everything's just converging on whatever little I've got left. My Easter Beast is getting double charged, and the Battle Shrine is going to die. Dead. Dead. Boom. Game over. So, everything dead. And what did we learn from that game then? Well, maybe don't take such big risks, because I think the payoff, if you recall what my actual plan was, the payoff for killing that flyer was decent, but was it worth risking the Honor Guard, which were one of my greatest deterrents for enemy movement? Probably not. I did have them in a poor position, though, on that wall, because they were always going to be hindered wherever they went, and I couldn't move them around as much because of that. So probably should have positioned the Honor Guard somewhere else. I could have even gone and put all my tokens on my Easter Beast, or put my Iron Beast over on the right with the tokens and just concentrated everything down that side, and then really held off on the left and tried to negate the hitting power that was over there. But again, I think it was going to be difficult regardless, because the opposing army is the kind of army that I wouldn't like to face with what I've got, because it's very, very manoeuvrable compared to mine and very fast. And if you can get into the flanks of my units, they are not nearly as good. The Spearlings only being good really when you attack them head on, and there's not too much speed in my army at all. Only one unit that flies, and the cavalry are not the fastest cavalry in the game by any means, especially the Honor Guard. But even the Soul Reavers are only speed 8, which is not as fast as the cavalry I was up against in this game. So, game 3. And after facing an army that's very, very fast and mobile, what do I get this time? Well, it's elves with multiple dragons, Draken Riders, chariots, and some archers. And there's also some forest shamblers in there as well, I think. So, this is the invade scenario, which is exactly what I would not want against that army. Because you don't want to face units that can get into your half and still be a threat to you. Because if a unit gets past your battle line and gets into your half and sits there, you want them to be out of the game at that point, because they're going to score points already, so you don't want them to be doubly effective by being able to attack you from that position. Things like chariot hordes are useful for that sort of scenario, because they're going to score a lot of points by being in enemy territory, and if they've got bows as well to shoot you while they're in there. And flyers with their breath attacks, they can the two dragons can be in my half breathing people, and they can also be in my half threatening with their long charge range as well, as my units are going to have to turn their back to advance into enemy territory. So, with that in mind, I'm pretty confident I was going to lose this game looking at the lists immediately. So I decided to try something different to see how it went. I haven't tried this strategy before, so I've put most of my army down here on the right. and they're a little bit tightly packed, too tightly packed perhaps, but I'm using that impassable piece of terrain there with the turn number on it in the middle as kind of a shield, and then I've put an archer horde over on the left, which I want the enemy to be deterred by because there are 2 volley guns staring in that direction. Now, I've come to realise that the volley gun positioning was less than perfect because I could have positioned them closer to that piece of terrain, which would have meant, because it's height 4 impassable, the enemy would have had a hard time seeing it without coming into range of not just the volley guns but also the archers. But the thing is, all these enemy units definitely outshoot me. They outspeed me, outmaneuver me, and the only thing I have, I think I have superior unit strength if I actually get into the enemy half and don't die, but that's going to be a long shot. So we shall see. So there's my big blob of doom. I've got my 2 hard-hitting cavalry units next to each other. In thinking wise, I've put them on that side because any enemy that gets into the flank of my army, it only has one flank at the moment, on my left, they're going to be charging into the units I care less about if they get into that flank. That was my thinking there, but also putting them next to the edge where there's a piece of impassable terrain in front of them with not a very big gap is going to hinder them going forward. But you've got to balance these things. I've got the Easter Beast on the flank there. It's nimble so it can get around a bit. I've got the Master Sergeant. I've got my flyer at the back. There's no particular big plan in mind with that. And over on this side you can see that little strategy I was thinking of. So if I had the top volley gun slightly further back, it would get it out of a position where it can be easily shot by the enemy. So there's one of the dragons, Draken Riders, regiment of archers. There's the enemy Easter Beast there in the pool. There is a chariot horde. There's a horde of archers who have the extra 12-inch range, which is why they're positioned right against the back of the board. And there are 2 heroes. And there is another dragon behind there. There's forest shamblers, and the character that can surge them is there as well. So, first turn, both the flyers move up into the woods, and they're looking down at my archer horde, which is fine. They're in cover at the moment though, so I'm not going to be able to do too much to them, but the idea is that they attack the archer horde. They may not kill it in one go, they might, but if they don't, they're going to, one of them will eat a counter charge and the other one will get shot with volley guns for a couple of turns, hopefully. If they do kill it in one go, the volley guns will hopefully do some serious damage to whichever unit is closest, which would allow me to then finish it off with lightning bolts and other things later on. That's the plan anyway. The forest shamblers moved up into the woods and the dragon is hiding behind that house. So, well, you can see that one volley gun is immediately shot to death by the chariots, and had I realised that that was a possibility, then I would have put my battle shrine closer, because the reason I brought the battle shrine partially was so that when I'm facing shooting armies, I can then put the battle shrine near the volley guns at the start of the game, so they're much less likely to get wavered and killed in turn 1. However, I didn't think those chariots were a threat to the volley gun because of how I had positioned it, but I should have put it further back. So you can see that that regiment of spearlings have been wavered by the archers as well. Then turn 1 for me, so the advance is on. The Duke has flown right up there, being a bit of a threat to those units around the woods. Everything else is moving up. Just trying to cover as much ground as possible to get away before that left flank crumbles, and hopefully get as much unit strength into the opposing half as possible. The wavered spearlings can't go forwards, they just turn round to cover that volley gun a bit in case someone comes in there to try and kill it, and the archers plink 1 damage onto the Draken Riders, which is about what you'd expect when they're shooting into cover, and 1 damage onto the forest shamblers as well from whatever was over here. Probably a lightning bolt. Turn 2. So the double charge into the archers with the dragon and the Draken Riders. They may well kill them in 1. It's not a guarantee there. And the other dragon has just moved back a bit, and everything's moved out the woods to avoid being charged. The archers delete that regiment of spearlings though, so 2 rounds and they're toast. The archer horde is dead, and the chariots are now a bit of a threat as well, so it's looking bad already. The plan, I can already say, has not worked, because 1 volley gun is not a deterrent to what is positioned there, and everything is going to be able to sweep round the back of my army and be in my half and still be a huge threat to me at the same time, which is the nightmare scenario, and what I was concerned about happening, and what my plan was intending to mitigate. But unfortunately, the positioning was slightly off, and it's not going to work by the looks of it. So, this bad boy, on turn 2, what does he do? Oh, 2 damage inflicted onto the Dragon Riders, putting them up to 3. So, yeah, that's not going to help very much. Everything else is moving forward, but it's too congested in there, definitely. Because I'm even shuffling to the right here to prevent everyone being flank charged by flyers and chariots. So, not ideal here with that house there. It's going to become very, very congested. What I was hoping for was that I would be able to decongest the area by doing multi-charges onto the Forest Chamblers, but they're just moving backwards and hiding now, which is going to mean I'm going to find it very, very difficult to get through there, because I'm not going to be moving at the double with anyone in the woods without charging, apart from maybe the Iron Beast who is behind another unit. So it's not looking good at all. The Easter Beast is moving up there though, hiding from the flyers, and the Master Sergeant has positioned himself just in front of those chariots so that they can't charge anybody. And of course, with his ensnare, they might not kill him with a single round of attacks. And you can see my Duke as well has positioned himself. He's been flying up into a dangerous position, landed next to the dragon in a position where he can't be charged, and I made sure to put him in a spot that those Forest Chamblers couldn't be surged into him with the amount of surge available either. So he's now looking into the flank of the archers, who may want to move to avoid that. So, next turn, the Draken Riders are going to eat that volley gun for dinner. And the dragon over there has moved into kind of in the middle, because he's got extra speed as well, this dragon, so he's threatening a lot of units now, so I need to do something about that. And over here, these units have positioned themselves so that my Duke is going to be threatened, depending on what he decides to do. Which is okay, because I'm tying up multiple units here with just the Duke. The archers have turned round as well. So the Master Sergeant is quite happily chilling there on 5 damage. And the way he's positioned the dragon means that the Easter Beast of mine can actually see it, so I'm going to have a charge there now. Which was unnecessary on my opponent's part, I think. I'm assuming it was just a mistake. Draken Riders eat the volley gun, of course. And my turn. So, you can see how congested it is now. So I've actually moved my Battle Shrine backwards a bit so it can lightning bolt somebody. I think I just rotated it. And it's within charge range of flyers now, but I've got my Soul Reavers behind there. It's the most obvious trap ever, obviously. So if you want to charge into this Battle Shrine and kill it, you're going to get Soul Reavered to death. Do you want to do that, or do you want to just eat lightning bolts for a while? And I'm going to assume that my opponent would very much prefer to eat lightning bolts, which is okay because it means they're going to have to be backing away if they want to avoid that, and it takes them to a less threatening position. Everyone else is very slowly working their way through the woods, which is a bit of a nightmare because the Spearlings, of course, are only speed 4, so they're really holding me up here. Kind of regretting putting them on the front lines. And over here, the Easter Beast damages that dragon, so it's not going to be able to fly. And the Master Sergeant puts some damage onto those chariots as well, which is nice. The Duke flies into the one position that he can't be charged by all the units that were turning to look at him, who were threatening him, and he's now just chilling out there next to the archers. He took 1 damage last time from being shot by them as well. So there's how it's looking in the middle. I've got my 2 little units there that are doing their best to hold up the enemy while I advance. So it's still not a totally lost cause at this stage, but it's not looking great. Turn 4, so this dragon realises that this gap is big enough for a dragon, but nobody else in the vicinity, apart from the Iron Beast, who isn't looking anywhere near this direction, so decides to just chill out there and threaten the flank, which is going to be a nightmare to deal with now because that unit of Spearlings can't fit down there. So, over on this side, the chariots have just moved fully into my half, where they can then threaten in a minute, and the dragon is trying to eat the Easter Beast. The archers and the Draken Riders are chilling out in here as well, scoring lots of points. And the heroes, I believe, the heroes and the archers perhaps, I'm not sure if the archers could join in, but somebody killed the Master Sergeant, so he's toast. The dragon, I think, used breath to put some damage onto those Spearlings there. and only this guy was in range to charge into the Duke, which I was quite happy with because he doesn't have enough attacks to worry him that much. And the Easter Beast gets eaten by a dragon. Turn 4, Thor Rordia. So a bit more repositioning. The Soul Reaver's still acting as a deterrent to anyone charging the Iron Beast, but they've had to move so they don't get rear charged or flank charged by the dragon that's behind the house now. So it's not a long-term solution, but they've got out of its arc for now. And there's not much damage being done over there, but little bits from lightning bolts here and there. And the Duke charges into the rear of the Archer Horde, because they moved away from him, but he only does 6 damage, which is not enough to worry them at all. I would hope to do considerably more than that. Not enough to actually kill them in one round, but I would expect to do more than 6, it's safe to say. So everyone else is just very slowly working their way through the woods. These spearlings are becoming a big hindrance to my advance here, and really they could have been used elsewhere. They weren't needed on this side at all. They could have been used possibly behind the archers as a deterrent to charging them perhaps, or behind the volley guns as a deterrent to charging them, but instead they're just holding up my entire battle line instead, which is very fun for them. So that dragon is going to have the opportunity to land behind my lines now, but there's not much I can do about it at this stage. So there's how it's looking. It's not looking great, but again, it's still not over. I've still got enough unit strength to potentially get something out of this game. Turn 5, and the dragon, of course, lands behind the Soul Reavers, so they're probably going to get eaten, and it's looking increasingly bad, shall we say. Draken Riders and Chariots are just happily chilling, moving away from my shooting attacks, and they're just happy to be in my half and still being a threat, as I said at the start, the one thing I wanted to avoid. So a bit of breath attack there damages the Soul Reavers, and the Forest Chamblers are moving away again, I think. So, repositioning again, the Soul Reavers decide they're quite happy to take a rear charge from the dragon, but they've positioned themselves so that they can't take a double front charge from the 2 flying units because of the Battle Shrine's positioning. So that's the thinking behind that, and a bit of lightning bolt damage onto the dragon. The Iron Beast turns round to threaten the dragon and puts 2 damage on it with the breath attack. Can't get a lucky wave on it though, which would have been really nice. And the Honor Guard are just hiding up there with the Spearling Horde, so I've got 2 hordes in enemy territory, which is okay, but that's not as much as the opposition have in mind at the moment. And you can see that the double dragon attack into the Soul Reavers, the Chariots get healed up heavily, and the Draken Riders go into the Battle Shrine. So the Soul Reavers die without doing anything, and the Battle Shrine dies. So I've now got 3 flyers staring at my army as I walk with my back turned away from it in order to score some points. So again, the nightmare scenario here. Turn 6, the Iron Beast decides to have a go at one of the dragons, doesn't kill it, and everyone else just moves away as fast as possible, but at this stage they actually turn round to face the enemy in case any charges are incoming, so all they'd be doing is taking themselves out of the scoring zone to make hindered charges against my units who are undamaged, so they're probably not even going to try that. And the Spearling Regiment have just made sure they're fully in enemy territory to score points. But that's where the game ends. So the enemy have multiple more valuable units in my territory. They've got the Horde of Chariots, a Horde of Archers, both the dragons, a Draken Regiment, a Draken Horde it may even be, and pretty much everything in my half. And I have 2 hordes and a regiment. So it's not horrifically one-sided scenario score, but in terms of the way the game played out, it was going badly from turn 1. In fact, from the moment I saw the lists, I think it was going badly, and the plan was designed just to be something different rather than the usual approach that I would take against a list like this. Trying to prevent the enemy from getting behind my lines did not work because of some poor positioning, and maybe I could have sacrificed some of my fighty units that never even got to fight anyway. I could have put some of them on the left as a real deterrent to going after the units that were protecting the flank of the main bulk of the army. For example, the Soul Reavers They're only a regiment, so they're not as valuable as, say, the Honour Guard for getting into enemy territory, so I could have used them either behind the archers or behind the volley guns to deter the enemy from approaching. But again, it was going to be very, very difficult though. Outgunned, outmanoeuvred, outsped. Not good. Here are all the trophies that I'm not going to be winning, which are very nice. Of course, handcrafted, as all the Golden Troll trophies tend to be, with also chocolate bunnies and Sparkle the Unicorn, which I believe is edible. So, not going to be winning any of those today, but they are very nice. I would have liked the best painted army one. That was nice and orange, but there were some very nice armies there. And there's an Easter Beast, best beast trophy as well, but there were some very nice ones of those as well. Okay, so the final game, and we're against the forces of nature, and you can see from the photo that there's been some vanguarding immediately, which is fine by me because it's not going to be immediately charging me in turn 1 this time. So this is the hill scenario, which a lot of people seem to be bringing in now. I'm not really a fan of it at all. I don't even think of it as a scenario, but I can see why people use it maybe as the last game when they think people are tired. I can understand it more on day 2 of a tournament, I think. Maybe even the first game on day 2, if people want to be drinking heavily the night before, or even in the morning. But I can understand just having a scenario where you don't have to think as much being in there, but I'm not really a fan of it. And in this tournament, the kind of scenarios that I was looking for, I didn't really get. My army is quite good defensively. It's not very fast, and I can put up a decent defensive wall that you can't break through that easily. If I position my units, for example, in difficult terrain, it's difficult to charge them. But there weren't really any scenarios where you just want to be sitting on objectives at the end of the game. So there weren't really any opportunities for me to sit my nice defensive units into a good little defensible position and then wait for the enemy to just bounce off the wall of spears. And the Defence 6 Iron Beast, Defence 6 Soul Reavers. So it's tough to crack, but that didn't really play into the scenarios too much. I mean, with kill, you can just go about killing however you want. You can dance around, you can look for flanks, or you can just meet in the middle in a big pit of death like you might do for a dominate scenario. So yeah, I think possibly my army was a little bit unlucky with the scenarios, but obviously you have to pick an army that can thrive in all circumstances. So with my layout here, I've put my hard-hitting units behind. Now I'm starting to think that I maybe protect my hard-hitting units too much, and that they sometimes don't get to fight as much as I'd like. Against this army in particular, where there's a big blob of death in the middle and very little of note on the flanks, I could really have put my cavalry units out there on the flanks and then brought them in to threaten. But I chose not to, so we'll see if that comes back to bite me. So, Forces of Nature, here's my layout. I've got a volley gun deployed over on that side quite early to deter my opponent from positioning things over here. There was nowhere really juicy for my archers to go. If you look at that terrain layout, there's no real decent lines of sight for them anywhere, and they would have been easy to avoid. And if I left a big gap, in fact where the Spearling Horde is, you can see there's a little bit of a gap to the left of that hill. But if I was leaving a gap there, it would become obvious that my archers were going there, and it's pretty easy to avoid that one narrow lane of fire, and then the entire flank over there, there was not really any enemy over there to begin with, or at the end either. So yeah, perhaps I could have used my volley guns to force the enemy perhaps to deploy in a position that was more favourable to my archers. Perhaps trying to manoeuvre them onto the right where it's slightly more open, but there's still difficult terrain which is going to give cover everywhere, and there's a hut and there's multiple hills, so it's not the most ideal. I've got my one volley gun on a hill though, so I can see over that hill in front, and if nothing is advancing, then I can move my archers onto that hill in front of them, but of course they've got forest shamblers staring down them already. So, look at that lovely pile of dice there. One thing I need to factor in with my deployment, actually, I tend to deploy... First of all, I pick sides based on the furniture and based on the room in general, rather than based on the battlefield quite a lot. And I also deploy on whichever side I would rather not have my dice pile on sometimes, not necessarily putting enough focus on the actual terrain. I put more emphasis on where I'm going to put all my stuff sometimes. If there's a nice juicy area here, like for example on the left hand side of the battlefield where the dice pile is, you can see that there's a big open area with no terrain and the hills are kind of closed around there, so there's more of a space for the dice, whereas if you look on the right, then there's two bits of terrain much closer than that hill is. So yeah, maybe I should not factor in where I'm going to put my stuff and just think entirely about the actual game first and foremost. Also, depending on where chairs can go as well, that factors into my deployment sometimes. And if you're on the end table, if there's a row of tables and you're on the end, I don't know if other people do this, but I would avoid putting a flyer out on that flank in case someone walks past and knocks it off with their baggy jacket or something. A metal flyer like this one, whose wing could get snagged on something and pulled onto the floor. So yeah, maybe I need to stop focusing on things like that and actually think about the game in future. So my opponent has, so this is Force of Nature, so I think these are Centaur, what they call Bray Striders, something like that. They're fast cavalry, and there's a hero up there as well. There's some Forest Shamblers, and I think the other ones are called Forest Guardians, are they? The ones that can surge the Shamblers. There is a great air elemental, there's some water elementals, there's an Easter Beast at the front on the right there with Easter eggs rolling around. There are some Worm Riders, who are the big cavalry unit there, and there's some regular cavalry as well on the left. And there's also a flying beastie, I think it might be like a Pegasus or something, with healing ability and lightning bolt behind the air elemental. And it took me a while to realise which way the air elemental was facing during this game, but I did notice it. Well, it was pointed out to me that it does actually have a face on it, and when I looked closer I could actually see it. And there's some more of the light cavalry over on the flanks, so very little on the flanks, so I could have positioned my heavy hitters out there and then worked my way into the centre later, but alas. So that hero is going to try and eat the volley gun. My opponent elects to go first, and everything's moved up. The Forest Shamblers are not going onto the hill. That bit of wood is representing where they actually are, but they wouldn't balance there, so they're not going over the hill because they don't want to get shot to bits. Over on this side, there's not much to threaten them apart from a volley gun, and everyone's going to be in cover. So it's not ideal for shooting this board. So the air elemental, who can see over the hill, pushes the Iron Beast back a couple of inches, which doesn't hurt that much really. Turn one for me. So the Duke has moved up into a position to threaten. Some Spearlings have moved up. Everyone else is just moving up, ready to fight, because it is kill after all, just getting into a position to prevent the enemy from charging through and to prevent them, if possible, from getting flanks with surges, where possible. Shooting damage onto those guys, and a little bit plinked onto the Easter Beast as well. So there's how it looks, and there's not too much of an advance. I've got this big wall of spears that he's going to have to chew through. Turn two, so that volley gun's going to get eaten. I think the volley gun actually did a bit of damage though. That may have been what did the damage to that unit of Forest Shamblers. Now they've positioned themselves to prevent me from charging past them with anything in that position there. So I'm going to have to just go for a multi-charge on them when the time comes. And the other Shamblers are staying off the hill, so my Spearling horde can't see them, so they can't charge them to get out of the way, for example. And here, everything else just chilling out around the hill. Idiot-Proof Dalek really enjoying the Halfling army. They're an enjoyable army to play, and it's nice to have an army that people like to look at as well. The Goblins that I've got are obviously very basic in the paint job and the basing, so it's nice to have an army that doesn't look out of place against some of the more impressive ones. This is a really nice army here. I think this one may have won Best Painted, this Forces of Nature army I'm up against here, and as you can see this is very nice. So the volley gun, what does it do? It gets wavered after it takes 1 damage, which is the usual for volley guns. I think it took a little bit of a lightning bolt there. And again, the opposing army didn't really have much shooting in it, if any. It only had that one tiny amount, I think. So I thought, well, I don't need the battle shrine around that. And of course, that means it gets wavered instantly. And everything else is just... They don't want to go over that hill because there's going to be multi-charge central if I can move my big horde out the way by charging something else. There's going to be things like Honor Guard getting in there. So the volley gun on the left is dead, of course, but it did get one shot up before it died. And I'm going to have to turn something around there to deal with that, possibly, unless I'm not concerned and just want it to charge into my archers. Turn 2 for me. So, the Spearlings have moved up there, quite willing to be charged. Everything else is just pushing up. There was a triple charge from the horde of Spearlings, the regiment of Spearlings, and the Easter Beast onto the Forest Shamblers, killed them. The Easter Beast moved backwards, so it can't get charged, and the regiment have pivoted a bit to block off anyone from charging towards the Easter Beast or through the gap. So there's how it's looking. Very blurry, that one. The archers turn round to face this hero, this centaur hero, and did a bit of damage with their bows. The Easter Beast is up to 4 damage from shooting over there. Turn 3 for the enemy. So you can see that that hero charges into the Master Sergeant rather than the archers, which is probably... Well, I'm not sure what's better, actually. The Master Sergeant's got much higher defence and ensnare, so he might actually be just as hard to kill as the Horde, but he is inspiring people around there, and he's more of a manoeuvrable nuisance as well. And the archers are kind of penned in there with nothing to do behind a hill. So the water elementals have positioned themselves so that they can be surged into the flank of the Spearling Horde, which is difficult to avoid once you start getting into a big mess in the middle of the battlefield where there's lots of surgible units around. You really have to plan quite a lot to avoid that. You can put units in front of them, perhaps, but you really have to think ahead. I've played Undead quite a lot in the past, and it's amazing how often people just forget that surge is a thing, where they'll like land a dragon behind your zombie legion, forgetting that you can just turn round and then be surged into them, into their rear, and get 120 attacks on them suddenly. It's amazing how often people let things like that happen. It's just difficult to visualise all the surge possibilities. So, of course there are things you can do to counter it, but when you start fighting and you start charging into units, often you end up kind of compact and you can't do as much pivoting as you would like, so it's difficult to avoid it when that stage comes. So the Easter Beast is using its breath attack on my Duke, who has been lightning bolting over there, so not much damage done. And here you can see there's double charge into the front of my Spearling regiment from the heavy cavalry unit and the small centaur unit there. I think they're heavy cavalry, or they might just... I'm not sure if they're just a regiment of the same cavalry as the smaller ones, or a troop. I'm not sure because they're not the same models. And you can see they do get into the flank there. And my opponent later on realised he'd forgotten he didn't actually have enough surge available. He's got 3 surge characters, so he could have surged the Forest Shamblers into the front as well. And these ones, these light cavalry, go into the flank of this unit of Spearlings, which I was okay with. I set them up knowing that was a possibility because they would have been hindered by the wall and they're not going to kill them in one go. And they don't kill this unit in one go either. And this elemental horde into the flank don't kill that unit in one go either. So look at that, 14 damage, but only a waver. But that's because they do have the battle shrine there, giving them rallying, and they are inspired as well by the Master Sergeant, who's right here. Because the halfling characters being, or the League of Rordia heroes being very inspiring does help a lot in these situations. So he gets wavered as well, which isn't ideal, because he can be handy on the charge. And you can see how it's looking in the middle now. There are lots of flanks opened up, but the Greater Air Elemental charged into the Soul Reavers. Did 1 damage, but I'm pretty cool with that because I think the Soul Reavers will be able to kill that thing in 1 or 2 turns, with any luck. There are a couple of moves coming up from me that I think could have been mistakes, though. Turn 3. So, First of all, the Duke flies into the Easter Beast because I kind of got tired of them just plinking wounds onto each other with their ranged attack, because the breath attack was doing more damage. In theory, I could have flown further away from the beast and then still been a threat because my attack's 24 inches. But I just wanted to get stuck into the fight faster rather than dancing around and distracting a unit that was cheaper than my unit. So I thought I'd charge in and see what I can do. Don't manage to kill it though. And then here, now this is a mistake. So, my regiment of Spearlings here, I decide that stopping that flyer from doing anything was a higher priority than preventing the Centaurs from charging the flank of the Soul Reavers. Which is probably a mistake. I mean, look at this situation here. So, the Soul Reavers are going to be countercharging the Air Elemental, and those Centaurs are in the flank. And I thought, they're only light cavalry, so what kind of a threat can they possibly be in the flank of a Defence 6 unit? I decide not much of a threat, so I decided to stop the flyer doing anything instead, but I don't think I actually wounded the flyer with the Spearlings, so I could have just turned around on the spot and blocked in that cavalry unit there, and protected the flank of the Soul Reavers. But no, that one didn't pay off. The Iron Beast had just enough space to charge into the Elemental Horde there, and you can see that, look at the standard bearer there, who charged into those forest shamblers because that was the only way he could physically get out the way to make space for the Iron Beast to do this. But then only 2 wounds were done, so it was kind of a waste of time anyway. And over here I double charge into the bigger of those units with the Spearlings and the Easter Beast. So it's very congested. The Honour Guard are just stuck behind still with the Battle Shrine, and the archers turn and shoot at that hero again at point blank range, but don't do too much. 6 damage from the Soul Reavers onto the Air Elemental, which is very disappointing. And there's how it's looking now. So, my opponent now has the possibility of a flank charge on the Soul Reavers with that light cavalry unit, which I wasn't too concerned about, but we'll see. So, the Battle Shrine gets charged by this hero now, trying to stop that lightning bolt in its tracks. Elementals back into the flank of that horde that couldn't physically move out the way. Double charge into the Soul Reavers, the Air Elemental back into the front, the cavalry troop in the flank, which isn't many attacks, so I'm not worried at this stage. I'm pretty confident they're not going to die, since the Air Elemental only did 1 or 2 damage the first round, and then I managed to life leech both of those back by wounding in return. And a double charge from those 2 cavalry units there onto the regiment of Spearlings, ignoring the Easter Beast. And the 2, I think they're called Forest Guardians, the 2 of them managed to get flank charges onto this Spearling unit, and the flying creature, I think it's a Pegasus, just flies away because it wasn't damaged, comically. And they do waver that unit only though, which is okay. The Easter Beast kills my Duke, who kamikazed his way in there needlessly, out of, I wouldn't say it was boredom exactly, but he just got impatient, flying around using his lightning bolt, and I thought, you know what, I'll just go in there, see if I can kill it in one go, don't want to get involved in this action, but it did not work out that way. So the Soul Reavers die. They are toast. Yeah, they took significantly more damage than I was expecting, and they are toast. And you can see where the flyers landed in there as well. Steve says they're called Forest Wardens. There we go. Forest Wardens. The horde of Spearlings is dead as well from that flank attack from the water elementals. And the Forest Shamblers only wound the Standard Bearer 3 times and waver him. And not too much going on there. You can see that the Battle Shrine has taken some damage as well, but not much, but it's not going to be able to use its Lightning Bolt. Turn 4 for me. So, the Iron Beast charges into the Pegasus, doing a bit of damage. The Battle Shrine, I think, charges into the Forest Shamblers, and I think it did. What was the Easter Beast doing there? What else was here? Let's just go back. So there's 2 cavalry units and the Shamblers. And I think the Easter Beast may have eaten that cavalry unit there, and the Battle Shrine had a go at the Shamblers. And what else is going on here then? So yeah, the Easter Beast and the Spearlings killed off both of those units. So that's nice. And the Master Sergeant is up there. Actually, I think they may have double charged into the big unit, and the Master Sergeant may have killed the small unit of cavalry with his bow. I think that's actually what happened. So that was a good turnaround there. The Honour Guard are getting into a bit of a better position to actually fight now, but I don't think they've attacked anything yet. But they're turned so that they will be able to charge something next time if they don't get charged. So, turn 5 for nature, and you can see that the Greater Air Elemental, I just completely overlooked the fact that this unit was shambling and that it could be surged. Wow, wow, wow. So it's going to get surged into the flank of the Honour Guard because I just did not know it had that rule. Because I just didn't look at the army list closely enough. Because I always thought that the lesser elementals were kind of the feeble, shambling ones that you could actually surge, because they're kind of like the lowly elementals, whereas the greater ones are perhaps more sentient, like the boss elementals, so I wouldn't have thought they were shambling as well, but obviously they are, because this one is going to get surged into the flank. And here, the Standard Bearer is getting sandwiched, he's going to get eaten and then overrun into the Battle Shrine. Easter Beast into the flank of those Spearlings who keep making bad choices and getting attacked by different units on all sides. Iron Beast gets charged by these Worm Riders who have been stuck out of the game for ages, but they finally got in there now that there's a bit of a space cleared through. The Honour Guard, with that surge into the flank, you can see the Standard Bearer and it was who else was in there? The Standard Bearer and the Battle Shrine both get killed. In here, they're both toast. But look at this, the Iron Beast who took a flank charge, he's up to 18 damage. Double 1. And there's no rerolls in this tournament. So that is potentially game changing, because that would have probably been game over there if he had died, because I just wouldn't have enough units left to do any killing. And this unit, what do they do? Is that dead Honour Guard there? Let me see. I think it is. I think the Honour Guard get killed by that surge into the flank. Turn 5 for Rordia. So, at this point, I don't think my opponent has much time left on the clock. I think it's worth pointing that out. So, the Iron Beast goes into the, I think it was the flyer that was in front of him and wounded, manages to kill it. And I think at this stage I'm not at all concerned about countercharging by enemy units because he's got so little time left. So, the Easter Beast, the Master Sergeant, and the Spearlings kill the unit that was in there, which was... Hold on, let's go back here. Who's next to the Elementals? I think they kill that Forest Shambler unit, do they? Let's go and check. Oh no, they're still there. Well, they're doing something. The Archers... They kill off the Greater Air Elemental with their bows at this point, which is a bit of a surprise. Turn 6, so my opponent, all he can do on turn 6 is rotate his units. So that's what he does, he just turns around to minimise flank charges now, because he's only got 3 seconds left on the clock. And now he's timed out and I've got 8 minutes to just push my units in and roll some dice for 2 or 3 turns now, without worrying about any charges coming back. Which means that it's looking quite good. So the Iron Beast, in his first go at this unit of Worm Riders, gets them up to 8, doesn't kill them though. The other units, focusing on killing the Water Elementals, don't do too much though, because they're quite tough to crack. Turn 6, so obviously my opponent can't do anything, so the Iron Beast is able to finish off the Worm Riders, with the Easter Beast helping as well. I wanted to make sure that unit died, and that's the end. So the Elementals didn't die, because I wasn't able to finish them off, but I did make sure the Worm Riders died. So because my opponent timed out, I was able to kill that unit, and this was after the Iron Beast was double 1'd as well. So, yes, that was very fortunate. and we worked out the scores to see how much we'd killed. It's the kill scenario, remember, so you need roughly about 200 points difference in order to claim a win at this point level. So we worked it out, and we actually killed 10 points apart in the scores, and I can't actually remember who got 10 points more kills now, but that's kind of irrelevant because that means it's a draw. So that was quite lucky there. I think I almost paid the price for having my powerful units stuck behind and then not protecting them enough. As you saw with that Spearling regiment, they could have easily protected the flank of the Soul Reavers, but they just chose not to. They prioritised something else because they underestimated one of the units. I think because they were going through woods, just subconsciously you think anytime someone charges through woods they're not going to do anything, but of course they're forces of nature, so they ignore anything that isn't an obstacle anyway. So that was a mistake, and the Honour Guard never really got to do anything of note apart from get eaten because I didn't realise that the Greater Air Elemental could be surged and just neglected that. So in the end managed to squeeze a draw out of it due to opponent timeout, and I'll take that because the first game, massive win. Second and third games, massive losses, especially the second one. Fourth game, you can't really get closer than 10 points apart in the kill scenario draw, can you? So overall, definitely not the greatest, but I think games 2 and 3 were against the two armies that I would most want to avoid with my army. If you asked me what kind of army would give me the most trouble and what would I struggle to deal with, it would be those two. Lots of speed, lots of manoeuvrability, harder hitting probably than my army, and the harder hitting units are easy to get into the fight as well compared to mine because they're faster. And yeah, I think overall the Iron Beast just doesn't really pull its weight. I know it got very lucky in this last game here, and I really like the model that I've used for it, but just having one Iron Beast, it doesn't seem to do enough. And next time I run Rordia, he may end up being dropped out, and I might try something totally different, because I've run some variation on this list for quite a few tournaments in a row now, so I think I might change it up. I'm definitely taking a different army to the next tournament, which is Ultibash. I think it's Ultibash 7 they're up to now, or 6, I can't remember. But either way, I'm taking something different to that, because it's at a different point level, and I've got a very specific army list in mind, which you'll have to wait and see. That's going to be in a couple of weeks. And after that, there are a couple of tournaments that I haven't signed up for yet. There are some 2-dayers over the next few weeks, or / months, that I may sign up for. One of them's at a very high point level, and I don't really have enough Rordians to get, I think it's 2,600 points, one of them. I don't have enough Rordian models, really, to get to that level. So I may have to take something else there. I've definitely got enough goblins, and if I were to go as undead and use some of my Rordia models, that would give me enough as well for a full army. If I use them as undead with the undead models I've got from my actual undead army, not the undead halflings, then maybe I could do something there as well. But next time I take regular Rordians, I'm going to try something different. I haven't really tried out Dogs of War too much because I've been running the Spearling formation, which generally does okay, but I found that everything else I've got doesn't really hit hard enough. If I don't get the Honour Guard and the Soul Reavers into combat, things don't die very easily, especially at slightly lower point level, like this, where you can't take 3 of things, so you can't take that third volley gun, which makes a big difference as well, because having 3 of them can definitely shred things. So I will try out some other things. There are some lists I just can't physically make because I don't have enough models, and it would be too expensive to buy more at the moment. So, for example, the Knight formation, I just don't have enough, and I can only get them from America because the models I use are from a very, very small one-man operation, and it would be very expensive to just order a couple of units and to have them sent over here. So either I'll have to run something with what I've got, or I may get more models when the undead halflings from TT Combat are released. When their Kickstarter is sent out and they go on general sale, I may have a look at what they've got. I think most of their models, though, would be more suited to actually running them as undead. I think they've got things like mummies and zombie halflings. I'm not sure if they have anything that would be suitable to fill the gaps in the actual Rordian list that I'm looking for, because I've already got lots of spearmen and things like that. So we shall see. I'll have to look around, but I've run Rordia for about 6 tournaments in a row now, so I'm going to be changing things up at the next one, like I said. I've also got the option of taking ogres to tournaments at some point, and goblins again, and haven't run goblins in the latest Clash of Kings book yet, so there's a couple of changes there, a couple of new things, so maybe I'll have to have a go with those at some point. My Stormcast ogres, I can't make what's considered the optimal ogre build, the one that seems to do well and that people seem to finish very highly in tournaments with, because I don't have enough models to use as the chariot regiments. I don't have enough of the big juicy cavalry models for the Stormcast, but I can make quite a missile heavy army for them. I've got undead, of course, which I've been playing around with some different undead lists that are quite elite and hitty, but we'll see if I end up taking one of those to a tournament at some point, because of course you can't go wrong with zombie legions and all that crazy stuff. If I were to take that to the 2,600 point tournament, I could take a very, very elite list there, and that would mean that I wouldn't need to take a zillion models. So we'll see. I'm going to look into all the possibilities and try out some different things. So let me know what you think, what you'd like to see me running in events. Obviously this isn't the end of Rordia, they are going to appear in tournaments, but I'm going to mix things up a bit. And of course I can run these models. If you just love seeing the models, I can run them as undead as well. So let me know what you want to see. Let me know if you want the goblins to make a comeback sometime soon. And any thoughts on my Rordia list as well, because it's had very mixed success. I seem to alternate. Sometimes it'll go really terribly, other times I'll just wipe the floor with people and win trophies. So a lot of it depends on which kind of lists I come up against, obviously. Like in this tournament, I think games 2 and 3, it was going to be an uphill struggle. At the previous tournament at Fronticon, it was an uphill struggle against the Abyssal Dwarves with just their walls of defense 6, when I didn't have much hard-hitting stuff at the lower point level in that escalating tournament. So yeah, if I come up against nothing but just slow, ponderous armies, I think this list does really well, because my hard-hitting stuff can actually get in there and do some serious killing, and I can shoot the enemy up while they're walking across the battlefield as well. So obviously the very few armies are actually slow and ponderous though. There's lots of fast stuff out there, lots of flyers, and I don't have the best answer to it at this stage, especially like I was saying earlier with the scenarios that were presented at this tournament. I don't think they were ideal for my army either. So all those things conspiring, combined with me just making some mistakes, I'm not sure if you can consider them a mistake if it's a gamble that was kind of on the line and it didn't quite pay off, because that was like a calculated risk rather than just, oops, I've put this unit in the wrong position. But there were some things that were not done correctly, shall we say, and some that were definitely mistakes. So Steve says, be nice to see you run the halflings as undead mixed with the other undead. Yeah, I haven't run undead for ages. I haven't run them at a tournament for a couple of years now, because all last year I was just running goblins, and it has been a while, and I've got a lot more options now, of course, with the extra models I've got in there from my undead halflings. So we'll see if I want to put something with undead together. The bases might not match if I'm running them from 2 different armies combined, but I think I'm past my stage of winning the best army award anyway, because I think I managed to win that with my Rordians the first time they were out on the battlefield when people were shocked and hadn't seen them before, but I think now the excitement's died down and people actually vote for what are legitimately the best painted armies now. So I'm not overly concerned about it having the best presentation of all the armies there, because I don't think that would be enough to win awards regardless, with the painting level that I work to compared to what other people are able to do, especially in the time that some people can paint in as well. If you look at the Facebook groups and see some people just starting their army, then a week later they've suddenly got 2,000 points painted to a standard higher than an army that took me 6 months. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I'm also thinking of starting a new army soon, by the way. I'm not sure whether I should announce what it is exactly until I know whether I can source the models for it, shall we say. Because obviously I'm not swimming in cash at the moment and I've already got so many armies it's difficult to justify starting a new one. But I do already have some models for the army I'm thinking of doing. In fact, I'm holding a bag that contains pieces of that army right now. I'm just not going to tell you what it is. And we shall see. Let's see. Steve, are you coming down to the Southwest Clash? Very unlikely, because it's too far away. And it would probably require having to stay somewhere for the night as well. So that would get most likely expensive. So I'm typically just sticking to northern tournaments. Franticon was a bit of an exception because that was for 3 different game systems in one event, so that made it extra worth the money. And there was a group of us travelling down together, so that made the cost a bit easier to digest as well. Right, I think it's time to wrap this one up. I've been rambling long enough after the tournament's over. I should tell you where I finished though. I think there were 18 players and I finished about 15th, so that's quite poor really, especially when this army has finished in the podium positions at 2 previous tournaments. So it's very, very up and down, and I think it is all just about scenarios and who I play against. I've picked a list that's really good against some armies, really poor against others. So if the luck of the draw gives me opponents that are favourable, I can do really well. So I think I need to, next time I take them, I need to have a tweak definitely and try something different. Okay, don't forget to check out all the links in the description, including all the social media and fundraising stuff. Follow me on Twitter, join my Facebook group, send me all your money, and so on. And with that, I think all that remains to be said is good night out there, whatever you are.